Hello again, this is UML Operator. All right, welcome back to part 3 of a 3-part series on Sparx Reusable Asset Service. I will include part 1 and part 2 in the link above. And in the last session, which was part 2, we talked about the reuse in RAS. So we talked about RAS storage folders, finding and managing reuse, and reuse in new projects. We also imported some models, some diagrams, some data, reusable data, into a new project. So if you haven't watched part 2 or part 1, I suggest that you watch those first before starting this session. Unless you feel comfortable, just go ahead. So in this session, we're going to be talking about GUIDs, Global Unique IDs, and potential conflicts when you're modeling. We're also going to talk about the proper method of reuse. We're going to have some continued learning in here, especially for administrators. And we're going to talk about best practices for reusable asset service. Right, so let's get started. All right, earlier I told you I'd get back to talking about global unique IDs, GUIDs. And so when we're looking at this particular model, I'm going to go to content down here. You can see, and I'm going to pick the first one, the element with the number 3 in it. It has a GUID, global unique ID, ending in D40. Right? So when we go over to what we imported into our project, we go to number 3, we go to properties, and let's go to projects. We see the global unique ID ends in 240. All right? So when you're importing or you're bringing in from RAS, you're literally bringing in a clone of that model in the reusable asset service, including its global unique IDs. Those are very important for syncing and maintaining updates to the particular element by its GUID, right? So if you're in a project and you were to bring in, let's just go to this one here. We're going to grab the number 3. We're going to hit Control C, and we're going to come over to this diagram, and we're going to hit Shift Insert. This is just like hitting Control C for copy, Control V for paste. You're literally bringing in a copy of it. So if we go down to GUID for this number, this element in this diagram, it ends in D40. All right. So if you were to type something in here about what this point is about, right? Post it to the database. If I go back here and I go to number 3, you just wrote into this record instance for this element, number 3, all right? You just wrote into it. That's not what you want to do. That's not the purpose of these discussion points. So what you really want to do is we're going to come back here to this model. We're going to hit Control C. We're going to go back to this. This time we're going to hit Control, Left Shift, and V, and we're going to paste element as new. All right. So now I've got the number 3 in here and it stripped the GUID from the original and it put in a new global unique ID GUID down here. Let's go down and look. It now ends in 4F5. Right. Very important to know when you're utilizing elements out of the reusable asset repository. So if I was managing this pattern in here, I'd want to be managing it under the GUIDs, right? But if I'm reusing the model or the pattern across my project, I don't want to step on the originating source. I want to create a new version of it. So literally what I would do if I was doing this correctly is I would have brought it in as a pattern. It would have had a model pattern. It would have been discussion points. I would have brought in the pattern itself, and it would have stripped the GUIDs for me as it brought it in, right? The correct way to do this is to bring it in under resources, under model patterns. We have this pattern that's here to be reused, all right? So the modeler can come in and I'm going to go ahead and close this one, and I'm going to go to the component diagram. The modeler can come in, grab this, drag and drop it into their modeling environment, hit OK. It's adding it now. Added the 10 points in here. It stripped the GUID. So if I go to number 3 here and I go to properties, it ends in 78. All right. So these are all different global unique IDs in which I'm able to use in my discussion, talk about various components and aspects of a model with my stakeholders. So this is the correct way to utilize patterns out of the reusable asset repository. So it would come in as reference data under patterns like we talked about that are exported. You might even have a particular reference data that's patterns only that could bring it in to the reference data. It would have put it under patterns, under reference data, would have brought in this particular pattern in here for the proper reuse, all right? So the other way that I was referring to, this is if the modeler is maintaining the pattern. They're managing the pattern. They would manage the pattern here. They would export it out as reference data, put it in the Reusable Asset Service as reference data, and modelers would bring the model resources in as patterns and then reuse them correctly, right? So global unique IDs, you want to strip GUIDs when you want a unique element that won't conflict with another element with the same GUID. We covered a great deal of material today. Create your own SQL instance. I provide you the link to the SQL video, how to create your own SQL instance. I provide a video on how to deploy your own Sparx Pro Cloud server, and then I show you how to connect to it. All right, so I would create a training area if you're not familiar already with this content, this material, and just practice. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to mess up. All right, so let's do something else. What I want to do is let's do a compare baseline to any changes we made. And as an admin, you'll probably come in and do this quite often. So we're going to go to the RAS storage root folder over in the browser. My browser's over on the right. That's the way I've got it configured. We're going to hit Control, Alt, and B. And we can see that a baseline was done on this date and time, only 01. We want to show differences to this baseline. After a while, you might have multiple baselines in here, and we're going to hit show difference. There are no changes. So I usually go in a couple times a week. I have preset days where I come in and just do a compare in my RAS repositories to see what modelers have done, if they've made any changes. And then I can go to reviews and I can talk to them via RAS reviews. If we log into, we go to publish, we go to reusable assets. I'm going to log into the instance. Now this is a demo instance. I have multiple RAS instances. I've got one for pattern management. I've got one for demos and training and that kind of stuff. So come in and check on it. I'm able to go to a particular item, select it, go to reviews. If they've made any changes, have a discussion here on it. Okay. And I'm going to wrap up here by showing you something that I do, that I ask my modelers to do. And I'm going to leave it up to you whether you can do it. If you don't want to do it, then, don't mark this chapter to repeat. You can skip over it. So if you're still here, you're interested in this part. So this is one RAS instance. Again, I have multiple. You can see patterns, reference data, and training modules, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a root node. So what I'm doing is you see add root node in here. So let me do it here just to show you. I'm on a root node and I'm clicking a root node and I want to add one for patterns. All right. And I want to add another, and you can see it's a root node. Didn't care whether I was on another root node. You can't create a root node under a root node. So let me click on this one, add another root node, and we're going to call this, I want to say training. I'm going to use the same naming convention, training models. Right? And now I've got one training models. I usually like to keep RAS storage down at the bottom, so I'm going to select this to move it down. There we go. And I'm going to put training models above patterns. Doesn't matter. Place them anywhere you want, right? So in this one, what I want to do, I'm on training models. I want to import it. I'm literally going to import this model into this instance. And so let's do this now. And again, like I told you earlier, I usually use package end dependencies because I just want to, if they had dependencies on it, I want to make sure I'm bringing those in. If I just hit package, it's going to bring in this package. So I usually will do this. It gives me this warning. Yeah, go ahead, override. I don't have any of these. If you already had this in here, it would override it, right? So it's bringing it in, and there we go. It's complete. Now I have this model in this SQL instance, right? Now, whoever the author is, they may do this themselves. I asked them to do that. And then they may come in here and do a baseline. We're just going to do a new baseline on this package, 0.1. Doesn't matter if it's 0.5 over in theirs, it's 0.1 here, right? And they may do a baseline, put some notes in here and so on, what they're doing, because they're now moving from their original source to managing this in this particular repository, right? So now I have it here. If I go back over here and I select this item, find in browser. Well, let me make it harder. Find in browser. It goes right to it now, right? Because it's in this instance. The author didn't version it into RAS here, but when you're using this feature, the very first place it searches is its own SQL instance. And if it's not there, you get that error, right? And I can compare the package in the model to a baseline, and there are no changes, right? So let me go ahead and close baseline. Let me keep RAS up. Let me go ahead and close this, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to patterns and do the same thing. We're going to go to patterns. We got the pattern right here. If I right click on this and find a browser, it's not here, I'm getting the error, right? So I am going to import this, want to be on the package that I want to import. It's patterns. Patterns is a storage area. This diagram type, this model type is a pattern. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to select import. So select it, hit import, package and dependencies. If it's there, it's going to override it, but it's not. It's brand new. And here we go, right? Now I have this pattern in here, and as a practice, Control-Alt-B, new baseline, and then this is 0.1 because it's the first version of it in this. Hit OK. There we go. Now we got a baseline. Now, and let me make it harder. Just go up here somewhere. Yeah, good enough. Now when I right click this, find in browser, look at that, it goes right to it. So you want to manage your stored assets from the SQL repository in which it's managed, right? So I'm in the cloud instance. If I go to the SQL instance, it's the same SQL database, right? See, there's the root folder for training models. There's the root folder for patterns. If I log into Reusable Asset Service, for this one, I'm going to go to, let's go to the pattern one, all right? I'm going to right click on it, find in browser, works the same way, found it. I'm going to make it a little harder this time. Let me minimize everything. Go to training models, right click on it, left click on find in browser. Look at that, found the package that fast. So you can manage your changes here and you can do a lot more. Now you can take advantage of collaborating on this particular model, hit the start, go to discuss, and your stakeholders can start discussions and reviews using the SQL collaboration capabilities. If you have security turned on, it allows you to do it by modeler. So right now UML operator is logged on. If another user is logged on, it will basically show where the discussion or who the discussion is coming from. So I cover that in another video. around collaboration. So let's recap. We've talked about installing Sparx SQL. I've shown you in a previous video how to deploy Sparx Pro Cloud Server for your use. I showed you where to get help if needed. We talked about what Sparx Asset Service is. We connected to a Sparx repository. We created new storage areas. We exported and imported reference data into our Reusable Asset Service. We imported models into our Reusable Asset Service. We talked about managing our Reusable Asset Service storage root node. And we talked about properly managing your RAS repositories. In this case, we had one where we're managing multiple root storage areas and the models they contain. I know it's a lot. Follow the chapters down below. Leave questions, comments, concerns down below the video. Good or bad, let me know. There's a lot of stuff we didn't touch on. Again, probably about 25, maybe 30% of what you can do with Reusable Asset Service and managing across multiple, like things like delete. So you see this version right here. I can delete the package dependencies from here, and you see there's two over on the right-hand side. If I delete one, yes, as soon as this refreshes, so if I reload the model, you can see that we folded back to the first one. Remember, I had comments on it. And if you look in the registry, we went back to version 01, right? So be careful about deleting things, because once you delete them out of the database, you're not getting them back. So you're going to have to re-import from the originating source. We covered all of that. That's a powerful reason for having the originating source here. So you could just simply re-register it if you made a mistake. But be careful about deleting things if you don't know what you're doing. A lot to cover. All right. So be touching on Reusable Asset Service a lot now going forward, since I've talked to you about SQL, Pro Cloud Service, Server, and Reusable Asset services. So look forward to talking with you more. Enjoy your modeling, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.